Tonight, smoke bomb calls out fire service, online trading app, and why now is the time to travel to Australia. Kia ora and good evening. Welcome to Central News on TV Central for Monday the 9th of March. I'm Amanda Harper. In today's news, a Gate Pa man has been slammed by local firefighters after carelessly letting off a smoke bomb in suburbia Greerton. Firefighters were called to an address on Tom Muir Drive at around 6:20 p.m. yesterday, following reports of smoke in the area. Greerton Fire Brigade Senior Station Officer Neil Brown says it was a real time waster and that someone setting off a smoke bomb in a residential area isn't the wisest thing to do. Police weren't involved and the man was pointed out the error in his ways. A Kiwi tech startup aims to raise $500,000 through equity crowdfunding to continue to grow its social marketplace app, which is based on a geo-advertising business model. Sellshed, a free mobile app which matches buyers and sellers in their local communities for online trading, has seen more than 13,000 users sign up to the app since its launch last October. The company, based out of Mount Maunganui, has so far raised $300,000 in private capital fundraising initiatives and is now raising further investment to continue its national expansion plan. Sellshed CEO Peter Howe says they put their proposal forward to Pledge Me because their due diligence and acceptance process stood out as market leading and provided additional credibility for their capital raising plans. Hot topics such as ISIS encountering the threat of terrorism, the Ukraine crisis and the economic and energy situation in Europe will be addressed at a public lecture at the University of Waikato on Wednesday. Michaelis Rokas from the European Union delegation to New Zealand will be addressing these issues to students, staff and the general public. University of Waikato Professor Neil Quigley says Mr. Rokas' visit is a good opportunity for the university to further strengthen EU ties and to hear an informed and wide-ranging perspective on international issues we are hearing about in the media. Mr. Rokas' lecture will take place on the Hamilton campus in LG03 at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, March the 11th. Youth came together over the weekend for the Walking in Colour fundraiser organised by City Bible Church and Cafe Agora in order to raise funds for school resources for children in northern Thailand. Director of Agora Community Trust Campbell Forlong says the 1 kilometre walk raised $3,650 and that will be enough to pay for one preschool to operate for 3 months. He says that although the day was a success, the goal this year was to engage youth to get them aware of the distance some kids in Thailand have to walk to get to school. And now for our region's weather. In the Tron, expect fine spells with a few afternoon evening showers. Make sure you bring the washing in, a high of 27 and low of 11. The rest of the Waikato will be much the same. Paeroa 26 high, 14 low. Matamata 25 and 13. Te Awamotu 27 high and 11 low. Tokoroa 25 and 11. And over in the Bay, fine with light winds, high of 26 and low of 16. For the rest of the Bay of Plenty, it will be fine with isolated showers. Te Puke, your high is 24 and overnight low of 16. And for the marine forecast, on the west coast, a variable 10 knots, turning southwest 15 knots tomorrow afternoon. High tide is at 1:51 p.m. And on the east coast, Bay of Plenty, a variable 10 knots, high tide is at 11:39 p.m. Coming up in the show, why now is the time to travel to Australia. Welcome back to Central News. Bay Trust have been supporting community groups for over 25 years. Their mission is to build, strengthen and enhance Bay of Plenty communities. Hilary has more on their story.
Well, the focus is looking at Bay Trust and how we fund in different communities and saying if we want to concentrate on two areas, and the two areas we were looking at as focus areas, capital E for capital A for us, were the first 1,000 days of a child's life is the prime time to make a big difference to that child's outcome and their future in this world, and youth. We didn't call it youth issues because we don't see youth as an issue. We see them as a positive thing, so we called it youth engagement. How do we involve youth in the community in productive ways, in employment and education, and to ensure we don't have problems with them getting into things that we'd rather that they didn't get into. So that's the focus of the report.
Why the first 1,000 days?
As I said, because that is the prime time. All the evidence has shown, the psychiatrists, the health people say, that if you can set that child up for learning and for school and for development within that critical development period of the first 1,000 days, then you've got them for life. One of the issues is, when does the first 1,000 days start? Is it from conception or from when they're born? We've actually taken it from conception, because when the mother is pregnant, etc., that's a very formative time for the child too. And you can't actually talk about a baby without talking about the mother and the baby, or the family and the baby. So in order to help with baby's development, we need to look at parents' development as well.
What is the Trust aiming to do with the information?
Well, it's very much a first step. This is the beginning, not the end. What we wanted to do was to say, if we want to focus on these two areas and we want to fund these two areas, what do the community think of these as priorities? What do they see as areas that we could develop into? How we could progress forward, what are the proactive ways we could do this, and what are the best types of things to actually fund. And one of the things the report has actually come up with is a checklist of the types of programs. So we've now got a comprehensive checklist. So if somebody comes up to us and said, can you fund this program? Yes, we'll have a look at it and we'll run it past this checklist to see if it corresponds with all the good elements that the report says and evidence has shown, their research has shown. Other good things.
Brings me to my next question. What is Bay Trust?
We used to have community-owned banks called the trust banks. Okay, now these were around when I was growing up, and there was Trust Waikato, there was Trust Bay of Plenty, there was the ASB Trust in Auckland. Now these were community-owned, so it was community money that started them. They were sold to Westpac some 25, I think it was, years ago now. So it created a pool of money that was not the government's money, it was the community's money. So the government said, oh, what do we do with this? So they set up a number of these trusts. There's actually 12 community trusts in New Zealand. And they said, well, we'll set up this fund with the community's money and we'll appoint trustees to look after that money and put the proceeds back into those communities in that quite tight geographical areas. So that's where our funds came from the start. So we're a philanthropic trust with the aim of, well, our mission is to build, strengthen and enhance Bay of Plenty communities. So that's what we do. We provide direct funding in the way of grants to different community groups. We also try and go beyond that. It's called Do More Than Give, which is a bit of a catchphrase in philanthropy. So rather than just giving away money, we look at other ways we can assist. And this is one of the recommendations from the report as well, is to look beyond straight granting practices and see how else we can assist our communities. For example, two things. We don't have to give our money away. We can invest directly into community assets. And then there is a social benefit and an economic benefit. Rather than investing in overseas assets, we could have some money locally. And the other thing is there's many not-for-profit groups out there run to a large point by volunteers. No official training, no guidebook that says how to do this. So we have in the past, and we certainly will in the future, put a lot of money and effort into capacity building of those people. Because if you work for a corporate, they can afford to send you out to training sessions. But if you work for a not-for-profit, where money is very tight, that kind of funding is pretty hard to get hold of. So we've subsidised a large range of capacity building exercises, sent people to conferences. Yeah, we're open to funding those sorts of things, yeah.
For more information on Bay Trust, head to www.baytrust.org.nz. Next up, Hilary talks to Professor Chris Battershill and finds out what makes some of the Bay areas unique to the marine environment.
We have very high biodiversity here. We've got representatives of most of the animals and plants for the northern half of New Zealand, in fact the North Island. things that have a subtropical origin all the way through to some, cold temperate, almost subantarctic things out in the outer islands. And the reason for that, and in the harbour, the reason for that is that in the bay there's this gyre that comes down from the East Auckland Current, warm water, subtropical. But at times you've also got movement of more subantarctic water creeping up the east coast from the south. And every now and then that sort of comes in and comes into the wider bay, and then of course there's good intake of that into the harbour here. So we're seeing a real mix, and we live in an enormously biodiverse region of the country. It's quite unique in that sense. And the species that we're seeing, for instance, some of our students are looking at juvenile fishes, baby fishes coming in with traps in around the marina, and I mean, she's seeing lanternfish, blue nose, you name it. Things that normally you would see in the outer subtropical islands like Tahua, Mare Island, the Ordermans, the Poor Knights coming into the harbour here. Now, whether they're using the harbour as a nursery ground or not, well, that's the subject of her and other people's work to come. But yeah, it's here, vibrant.
What are some of those subantarctic species?
It's just a lot of the colder sponges in particular. We're seeing representatives of some of the sponges and sea squirts and things that I've seen, for instance, down in Cook Strait, Kaikoura. Our interest in those is because no one's ever really focused on sponges. For instance, this all of the stuff you see encrusting on the rocks and things, often vibrant colours. The minute you look, you make discoveries. So once again, we have a student here, Sam McCormick, and he's looking at the sponge fauna inside of the harbour and outside. A bit of a transect out into some of the offshore islands. And we're still going. It's slow work because we're seeing new stuff the whole time. So I think there's probably 10 to 20% of what he's collected is new. It's either a new record for the region or there's potentially new species in there. And there are things, as I said, that have affinities with the deeper south, including species that we have interest for the chemicals they have in them, which have, medicinal leads, opportunity, all sorts of other stuff. But they're there, and they're sitting out there in Pilot Bay, under the wharfs. You dive under some of the marina pontoons here, and it's just a vibrant, massive colour on a clear day. It's quite incredible. High diversity.
Biodiversity in the marine environment, how would you describe that?
It's the measure by which you can often check the environment's health. So for here, we're very fortunate that we still have an enormously healthy environment in the harbour system and immediately outside of it. That's why there's so much concern, for instance, around Rena. We thought that might be threatened. The species that are making up that biodiversity tell you how healthy that environment is. And the sorts of species we have here, as I just said, is a mixture of these competing forces of current systems. And we're not seeing such a massive takeover of invasive species. They're here, and there's a lot of vigilance going on at the moment because of fan worms and other things. But unfortunately, in places like Auckland Harbour, they're seeing massive decline in biodiversity, and the species that are left there are indicative of a very modified environment, an environment under a lot of impact from all sorts of things: pollution, invasives, sediment, you name it. Here, we're looking at a fairly pristine environment still, both in the harbour and outer harbour areas, the beaches. Despite the fact that people are, alerting you to the fact that there's sea lettuce issues and things like that. That tends to come and go a bit. A lot of that is natural, actually. Sea lettuce is a natural part of it. The boom-bust periods, arguably not so, but despite those sorts of things, we're still doing pretty well.
Stay with us for more from Hilary after the break.
With those warm currents and those subantarctic currents and them all coming together, do you think maybe that's why it's called the Bay of Plenty?
I think you put it together well. I think you're absolutely right. Because from Māori prehistorical times, it was recognised as a basket of many different things, and you have hit the nail on the head. It is this competing source of we call them recruits, but progeny of all sorts of different species coming in. and surviving. So you might have a warm period, so you get the warm thing surviving, then you might have a cold period, but enough of the warm ones survive at the same time. So at any one point in time, we're looking at, quite a lot of diverse things happening there.
I guess in a way that makes it a bit of a mecca for scientists such as yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when I had the opportunity to come here, I leapt at it because it is, I can't think of any other place in the country, nor indeed internationally, where from one harbour even, you have a cross-section of inner estuaries, outer estuaries, open ocean beaches, rocky headlands, and then a whole myriad of different island systems going right out to these subtropical type systems. And then, of course, you've got an active volcano right in the middle of it all. I mean, that's nirvana in terms of the habitat diversity. That's another reason why we're getting so many things here. So it's a unique opportunity.
And of course the other elements like the man-made port.
Well, that's right, and to me, that's part of our life as well. I mean, we all drive cars, we all have plasma screens. That's how that stuff gets in, petrol and things like that. And it's all about balance. It's about planning and balance. You've got to eat, you've got to live, you've got to earn jobs, and a lot of us do that from the marine domain. So it's about moving all those things together. And once again, in terms of the opportunities for research here, you look out that way, out of this window, you're looking at the port, and and it's active. And then you look out the other direction, you're looking out at a pristine marine environment with Matakana. And yet it's living, I think, in reasonable balance here. There will always be issues, but that's a function of life. We need to understand how to make it work.
Can we still see the effects of the RINA on some of our coastal species?
No, and it's amazing. We're surprised at that. We've looked very hard. The open ocean beaches and the rocky headlands, we can't see a legacy of RINA, and we've done deep sediment cores off the beaches that were black through those periods in 2011, and we are finding some traces of what they term the PAHs, the more toxic elements of oil products, but the fingerprint from those looks like it's not RINA. It's a fingerprint of normal urban living. So you got roads, you got road runoff during storms, weather like this, a bit of drizzle, it'll run off after a dry period, and that's a fingerprint that you're going to have around any city. So it's gone. Out at Otaiti Astrolabe Reef, where the ship is, you have any ship lying on a reef getting moved around and crunched up during storms, you're going to have some debris field. So yeah, there's some issues out there that are being looked at carefully, but they're trying to get as much off at the moment as they can. But that will be a point of focus. The wider bay, and we've looked hard, the regional council's continuing monitoring. We've escaped, and very luckily so.
Wow, who would have thought that the Bay of Plenty would hold such plentiful marine life? Now is a better time than ever to take the family across the ditch for a holiday, with the Kiwi dollar strengthening against the Australian dollar. Carol Sutton, travel expert, tells me more.
Well, it's really exciting actually. The Kiwi dollar is really strengthening against the Australian dollar. It has done now for quite some time, but it continues to strengthen. We're currently getting close to parity, which means that the Australian dollar with the New Zealand dollar will be close to the same value, which is exciting.
And how does this affect travel bookings?
Well, again, it actually just encourages people to travel, because more than ever before, travel is affordable, and it's affordable for everyone because they're actually getting more bang for their buck. Like, basically, their buying power is greater. They've got in excess of a 10 to 15% better buying power now that our dollar is strengthening against the Australian dollar.
Okay, so there's quite a lot of benefits.
Huge benefits. It really makes travel affordable for everyone.
Yeah. And how much of an increase in travel across the ditch to Australia are experts predicting?
Well, in 2014 we saw a 10.3% increase, which was great. 2015 we would expect to see at least another 7 to 8% growth, which is exciting. So over a 2-year period, that's going to make 17 to 18%.
Okay. And how will this benefit the New Zealand economy if so many people are travelling overseas?
It just actually generates spend, so everyone benefits from that, whether it's actually the transport providers, the airlines, like the shuttles. It's good as far as people are concerned. They're actually venturing further afield, they're actually gaining further knowledge, cultural experiences, that sort of thing. That will all come back into our economy.
And kind of grow us as a people, so to speak.
Absolutely. Travel enriches people's lives, and I think that that's actually a really neat thing to actually be part of, to actually be sending people away and that they're coming back enriched and actually with further knowledge. So it's great.
Is that why you're quite passionate about your job?
Oh, I'm really passionate about it. That's one of the things that I love to do. Like, I try and exceed people's expectations by actually delivering more than what they may have expected, and matching products to suit people. So again, just that learning through travel is really fantastic.
Now, who is likely to take advantage of this closing of the gap between the New Zealand dollar and Australian dollar?
Well, again, that's the great thing. Everyone's going to take advantage of that, whether it's families that previously weren't able to afford to go to the Gold Coast with their children. Couples may look to do longer holidays to South Australia, Adelaide, Melbourne, that sort of thing. It just makes it far more accessible. I mean, we've got grandparents, it may just affect VFR, whereas people that have got families over in Australia will actually travel more frequently. So everyone will benefit from this.
And what are the most popular places to visit in Australia?
Well, the Gold Coast is certainly the most popular and the biggest market, but it's actually evolving from that and it's growing. So we've got the Sunshine Coast, which has actually seen some really good growth, and we've actually got services directly now into Mooloolaba, into Maroochydore. That's seasonal, so that's exciting. The tropical north, like opening up the whole Great Barrier Reef, is exciting. One of the biggest growths that I've actually personally witnessed is South Australia, Adelaide, with the Foona wine. Like, we've got direct services there now. So again, all of those destinations are actually having the privilege of actually seeing some growth.
Yeah. And what would you recommend for a young family that's travelling for the first time?
I'd definitely recommend the Gold Coast. It's right on our doorstep. It's so incredibly affordable. So many people have this dream about Disneyland, and I try and encourage people, hey, don't wait. You know, if you're waiting, it may almost be too late. Gold Coast is affordable right now. They've got fantastic theme parks right there on your doorstep. Accommodation suits our market and the fact that it's self-catering, so we've got apartments. So definitely the Gold Coast, I would encourage a young family.
Yeah. And what about a couple that are looking for a bit of adventure?
Couples that are looking for a little bit of adventure, again, I would be looking at South Australia, looking at your Adelaide, getting up into the Barossa, that sort of thing. Awesome shows in Melbourne. Even Sydney, look, you know, a couple of days out in the Blue Mountain, absolutely magic out in that region. So much for everyone to do.
Thanks, Carol. Now that is it from me tonight. To stay up to date with all that we do, like us on Facebook, search centralnews.tv, or if you think you have a story lead or feedback about the show, email news@tvcentral.co.nz. We would always love to hear from you. I will be back again tomorrow night with more stories from the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty. I'm Amanda Harper. Have a good night. Pō Marie.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.